Mr. Joel Cadesky, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. I appreciate you thinking of me.
Of course, of course. How could I not with all the LinkedIn posts that I see all the time and the dinosaur emoji and the book emoji and
Don't
I've
forget the microphone.
and the microphone. I think we got connected uh in the fall of 2023. Our paths crossed on LinkedIn, and ever since I look forward to what you post and your stories and that just amazing career that you want to share with everybody on LinkedIn. And so it's a real privilege for me and an honor to have you on this interview here today.
No, thank you very much. I have a lot of fun with LinkedIn. I gave up my X account, which was Twitter, 2 or 3 years ago, and Instagram. I only watch it for one reason. I'm pretty well on Instagram. I've got pretty well every professional wrestler, and I just see what they post, and I never comment, and that's basically it. But LinkedIn, I've just found just so enjoyable to write, and sometimes I get good responses from people, and sometimes I don't get any, which is fine. I have fun. The thing about LinkedIn that I learned is don't be afraid to be yourself.
Yep.
That's the one thing. If anybody asks me for any advice, and I'm not a techie, everybody knows I'm no techie, but that's the advice: be yourself. Don't be somebody else.
And
So
I think
thank you for that.
And I think one of the things that drew me in is the fact that I saw that you were a wrestling fan. And so, yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we have in common. I've been pretty much on and off lifelong wrestling fan myself. So when I saw that, and I think you even posted once about some kind of wrestling situation. So I thought that was really excellent and a reason to at least reach out.
Yeah, I do that on the Sheik's anniversary of his death. On that for sure, because he, as far as I'm concerned, wrestlers are one of the best salespeople in the world, and I've explained that more than once. Don't forget WrestleMania 40 this weekend.
It's coming
Two
up.
nights, 2 nights, Philadelphia.
Who you got, Cody or The Rock?
Well, I got to tell you, I listened to a station on Sirius Radio, channel 156. No plug, I don't get anything. Called Busted Open. And this morning they came up with an angle that I think may very well be that Cody will lose and The Rock will win. And it looks like they're going to go in. They may carry that storyline for another year. So it looks very, very interesting. But the thing about wrestling, up until they go into the ring, and even while they're in the ring, you never know what's going to happen. They'll change according to the fans.
Yep. Yep. And isn't that a good parallel for what we do in sales sometimes?
Oh, if you don't listen to your client, then because you think you're going in with something on life insurance, and next thing you know, the guy says, one of my friends died of cancer, and I understand that he got some money before he died. And what's that all about? And I say, well, that's called critical illness. Do you sell that? Yeah. And then we do a critical illness and forget the life insurance, and you go with the flow. If the client's interested in something, same with the audience. The audience may turn on Cody. They may turn. I mean, everybody thought The Rock was going to be a baby face when he came in a few months ago, and he's now the biggest heel, right? So the audience didn't like him. So now he turned to be a heel, not a baby face.
Yeah, they might just flip the script on us. Who knows?
And you know what? That could be done 3 minutes before they go in. By the way, for those that aren't wrestling fans, a baby face is not this. Okay. This is not a baby face. A baby face is the good guy. I'm a good guy, but not with the baby face.
Yep, and the heel is the bad guy. So
the
you
heel
always
is
need to have
the
a contrast.
absolute bad guy, and we all know heels in our life. And that's also why wrestling's so good, because it is real life. We all know good guys, and we all know bad guys. And sometimes the bad guy turns into be a good guy, and sometimes the good guy eventually turns into be a bad guy. And everybody's gone through that.
And often when you least suspect it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Just on a dime. And I think right now, I don't think they know how the ending's going to be on. And I think they're just going to wait for the audience to give them a steal, and they'll go from there.
Yeah. Yep. Joel, one of the other reasons that I became interested in getting connected with you is the fact that you wrote this book, this lovely book. I have it on screen right now. So that was one of the draws that brought me into your profile and wanting to get to know you a little better. I picked it up. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. So tell us a little bit about this book.
I started this book. It took me 2.5 years. I started it more than likely around 2020. It had nothing to do with COVID. I just started thinking about it. I didn't know very much about my father and mother. I knew a little bit about them. I had a couple of stories, but I started, when you get to an age, you you know, when you get there, you're not talking if you die anymore, you're talking when. And you start looking at your life and you say, what will my children, especially my young grandchildren, know about their grandfather when they're in their 30s and 40s? And I can tell you right now, before the book, very, very little. My grandchildren are too young to really know. I mean, they know who I am, but they don't, you know, when they get older, they're going to forget a lot of the stuff we're doing now. But my children, you know, one is a PhD and the other one is an MD. So they went through university. They did very well, but Daddy had to work real hard to get them to where they were, to get the money to do what they were doing. And I wanted to tell them that life isn't that easy, that you have to work. And I think that's why both my children are successes, because I think they saw that if you work hard, you can succeed. And I've obviously never been a slacker in any job I've ever had, whether it was a teaching, garbage guy, no matter what, I excelled at what I did. And I think that was one of the reasons. But I really wanted to leave a legacy for my children and my grandchildren. The other thing is, I wanted people who know me, in quotation marks, but really don't know me, to really know the real Joel Cadesky. And I've had more than one person tell me after reading the book, I now know why you do what you do. And I understand it. Where before I thought you were just off the wall or crazy or whatever. But now I understand. And I understand why you're so meticulous in work. I understand why you do what you do in servicing me as a client or as a friend, why you're so close to being with a friend. So I think that was part of it too. But it really was, I will go to my grave always regretting I never sat down with my mom and dad and asked, tell me about your life. I know where they were born. I know a little bit about them, but it's nothing. I want my kids to know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing background to the book here. And, you know, going through it, so much of what you talk about is obviously your work life. It's a big part of who you are and what you do. And the impetus for creating this story that you can share with your grandchildren is show how hard grandpa worked to provide for the family. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the kind of work that you do, the clients you serve, what that looks like today?
Well, I've been in the insurance business in quotation marks because it is a business. Could be an industry, profession, whatever you want to call it. You know, we now have the new name advisor. Everybody's an advisor. I always like the word broker or agent, but I tell people I'm an advisor too because I do give advice ever so often. They usually, hopefully, take it. I got started in the insurance business, really hooked on small groups. David Young, and it's in the book, as you know. David Young became a superb friend of mine, and he taught me how to really get into the small group market because Crown Life, fortunately, didn't care if your group was 2 lives, 3 lives, 5 lives. They didn't want the megas. They wanted the small guys. And he showed me that you can do very well with the small guys. So I'm still to this day, I will do a 3-life or a 5-life employee group. I don't care. The size is immaterial. But I got turned on because it did one thing for me that the large group won't do. I deal with the decision maker. I deal with the employees. You get a group of 200, 300, you got to go through layers upon layers, meeting after meeting, and we'll get back to you and we'll have a decision. Then they want this and they want that. It's the CEO, the CFO, the AFO, the EVO. And I just said, I don't want that. So I really like that. And then the other thing that I wanted in the small group market, I wanted the employees to know who I am. So I do something that I've been chastised for. People think I'm stupid to do it. I'm crazy. Every one of my clients in group, every employee is told my cell number and my email address for work. And I get phone calls from employee spouses. I get phone calls from employees. I get emails. And that is a service that I provide that I don't know of anybody else that will do that because you're getting phone calls at 10 o'clock at night. And in the book, I explain about the one where I was by Christmas Eve. The guy was at the airport. If it wasn't for me, he would have landed without his drug card. Wouldn't know how to phone. So that was part of the deal. So that's one of the things that I do, and I love doing it, and I spend a lot of my time. The other thing I do is the ancillary, because obviously when you're dealing with the owner of a company, there's some life insurance, some critical illness, disability. So I do that. And when I started with Crown Life, they had something called the Century Club. And the Century Club was very simple. Write 100 applications a year and you'll never worry. And I've always strived to write 100 applications on life, on top of all the groups I do. It's ingrained in me at the end of the year that I have to do that 100. And if I don't, I'll strive to do it in the last month and a half and just go out and push. And so I like the small. And again, I'm not in the heavy duty, big, huge premium market that a lot of other guys are. A lot of my people are averaging $30 a month, $50 a month premium. A lot of mom and pop, as they call it. I hate that term, but I can't think of anything else. I still am, and I hate to say it, but during COVID, I actually went and met people. I still don't like Zooms with clients. I don't mind this because that's fine, but I hate doing Zooms with clients. Pretty well, I'd say 90% of all my group meetings are with clients face-to-face in their office. I just set one up today for next week. He is a guy that is 100% face-to-face, Zoom. And I said, if we don't meet face-to-face, you're not going to get the renewal until the last day. And then you and I are going to be in trouble. So he's meeting me next Monday. But that's beside the point. The other thing, too, is I like sitting with people in their homes because you get to know who they are. You look at the wall, you see their children, you see the pictures, you see the person at work, they're all dressed up. You don't know what their home life is like. You meet their wife. One of the rules that I've had since day one, again, I didn't have a lot of training as you read the book, right? Training was lousy, but it worked out well because I learned, one of the trainings that I learned was from some course was you have to make sure the beneficiary knows who you are. And who's the beneficiary most of the husband and wife? It's the wife. So I want the wife not to phone Joel Cadesky and say, Mr. Cadesky, you don't know who I am. I'm Mary Smith. My husband was Bob Smith. You wrote him a policy years ago. I want her to phone me up and say, Joel, it's Mary. Bob died. What do we do? So I want to be there. The other thing that I have said, and I get in trouble over this because people are disagreeing with me, but that's okay. We'll see who's right in about 5 to 10 years. I think errors and omissions are going to be a big problem down the road because I give an example where I met somebody face to face in his office. And the first thing I did when I walked in, I went, smelling like smoke in here. He said, yeah, me. I said, what do you mean? You don't smoke. You told me over the phone to do a non-smoker policy with you. He said, well, I only have 1 or 2 a month. I said, no, 1 or 2 a month is a smoker. We had to redo the policy. If I do it over Zoom, I won't be able to smell that. He won't be smoking in front of me. What happens in 2 years? The person dies and they do a contestable clause opening. They find out from the doctor the guy was a smoker and wanted to quit. Case voided. Guess who gets sued? The broker. And I think there's going to be a lot of errors and omissions down the road on stuff like that where people are not meeting them. They're not asking the questions. A lot of times the agent, notice I use that word, not Pfizer. The agent won't even do the e-app. He'll get his assistant to do it. Well, they're just going to ask the questions. And you know as well as I do, there'll be a question come up and you'll say, could you explain that further? Because this needs more discussion. And then you'll find out. So I like the face-to-face. I've driven to Kitchener. I've driven to London. I delivered the policy one summer. I left the house at 5 o'clock. I got back at 9. All I did was meet the client, deliver the policy, get the money, turn around and come home. 4 hours total driving, maybe a half hour with the client. Am I crazy? I don't know. Is that client still with me? Yeah. Has he bought policies since then? Yeah. You know.
And that's no small thing because when you say Kitchener, when you say London, that's 2 to 2.5 hours one way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also tell the story in the book, again, you may bring that up later, where I always deliver until they started these direct deposits. But up until they did that, I delivered all my death claim checks. And the one I told about the snowstorm going to Kitchener to give the check to the beneficiary, which I could have mailed or sent by courier, I delivered it, took my wife with me in the car. It was a snowstorm. I don't know if you got up to that part yet. Maybe not. I shouldn't give that away. But I did. So I did go to Kitchener on a snowstorm with my wife, to deliver a death claim check that could have been couriered.
And this is really resonating with me right now because I'm working with one agent and she's a little newer in the industry, really motivated, really hungry, and she's excited about sales. She's excited about closing new life insurance policies. She's excited with talking to clients about their situations, their families, their legacy. She gave me a call the other week and said, "Hey, one of the clients that I've inherited from a previous agent called me to let me know that her husband died and she's making a claim. So she's making a claim against that life. And this is the first time this agent has ever actually dealt with that. It's been all bells and whistles and fun and, making money and closing deals. But now something hits the fan and she was kind of iffy on how to proceed from here. The first thing out of my mouth was, you have to go visit this client at her home. You have to. You have to do that. And she was a little, mixed on that, a little, I'm not sure if I want to do that. I don't really have a relationship with this person. I said, listen, this is actually part of the responsibility of your job. It's not all fun and games. It's not all just selling life insurance policies. When this happens, you have to do the human thing and go meet this person face to face, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You show up with a claim check. Hey, my name is whatever it is. Here's the claim check. And you leave if that's what the client is comfortable with. Sure enough, a couple weeks later, she calls me back to let me know that it went really well. That, as about as well as it could when you're delivering a claim check like that. And now she's probably got a lifelong client from this.
The other thing that she should learn as well, and I'm sure that'll come with time, is that every file you open up, and it could be 25 years ago, never closes until the check is delivered, and then the file is closed. So people say, how many files do you have? And I'll say, I don't know, but they're all open. All my clients, I mean, I've got clients that are on the books for 35, 40 years. Those files aren't closed because they're still alive. Yeah. Or I haven't done, or if the disability file, they haven't put in a claim. And people have to understand, and what bothers me, and again, we're going to have this discussion more than once during this hour, and I'll ruffle some feathers, but that's okay. That's part of being older, is that a lot of brokers look at the commission that's involved, but don't realize they don't earn the commission until the file is closed when you give the check. And I think that's something that really has to be ingrained. It's nice to make the money at the beginning, but you never earn it until you give the check. And I talk about some of that in the book, which you haven't got to, obviously. My chapter on my stories, I've got about 30, 35 stories in there. And I do talk about delivering checks. And some of them are heart-wrenching, and some of them are funny.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And one of the other things that really caught me by surprise when reading this book is earlier in the book you talk about the career that you had prior to getting into the insurance industry, business sector, whatever you want to call it. And some of the stories were actually very heartwarming, thinking about building that circle with all the students and making sure that this is a place where you can talk about whatever you want and some of those lessons you learned from your prior teachers. What I'm curious to know, because so many of us in the insurance industry, we often actually had careers prior to joining. And a question I always like to ask is, how did your previous career translate or transfer into what you're doing now? Like, what are some of the parallels or skills or things that you brought from, your life as a teacher to what you do in the insurance space?
Organization, number one. I had to know every single day of every hour of every day for the whole semester or year, whatever you want to call it, what I was doing. And when you're in sales like I am, and you are, we have to know what we're doing, not only today, tomorrow, but next week and the end of the month. And especially with group insurance, you always have a constant flow of renewals. So you know that I'm working on the June renewals now, and I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to meet with the client, I got to. So that number one is organization. And I was told when I joined Crown Life and they found out I was a teacher, that was a positive. And I said, why? She said, some of the most successful agents that we have were former teachers because of that. I think number two is you're standing in front of a room of 25, 30 children, and you're talking to them. No different than I'm talking in front of a client. I have to be organized. I have to know what I'm doing. The questions that are going to come from the kids are going to change what I was going to talk about. I'm going to have to do it. Same thing with a client. I'm going in for a life sale and I end up with a CI discussion, critical illness. So I think those two really, I think number three is I don't think that a person who's successful in teaching will be successful in sales unless they're a people person. You've got to be a people. You cannot be an introvert, even though I am, but you have to be. You cannot not accept people for what they are. You have to love relationships and you have to develop relationships. When I started my year every September with my kids, I laid the law down because I was taught in teachers college, never smile until January. And I never did. The first semester I was the heel. And then I turned babyface once, but I had them and they trusted me because they saw what it was like when I was the heel. What would it be like? Now he's a babyface. Could he ever go back to be a heel? And I think when you're in sales, you have to be firm with your client and you have to sometimes say, I'm the heel. You have made a bad decision. You shouldn't be thinking this way. This is a better way. Or I don't want to tell you that you bought a bad policy. I think you bought a policy from a bad broker and he gave you bad advice. Let me correct it now. Group insurance, I love for that reason, because when I go in there, the stories that I hear from them and the questions I ask and why, who do you phone when you have a problem? Who does your group insurance? They give me the insurance company. I say, no, that's not the broker. Who do you phone? When was the last time your advisor, broker, agent talked to you, spoke to you? What do you mean? I've gone into cases where I will say, who is your broker? And they won't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? You've been with them for 3 years. Well, every year we get a letter. Here's our rate increase, 5%, 10. We didn't know that people like you exist. And I'm very happy to say, not many, but I've had a few clients over my years have actually said, where were you 20 years ago? I could have used you then. And I say, you never called me.
There you go. It's so funny to hear you say all this because the one word that I think is somewhat overused sometimes or maybe used improperly in our business is the word relationship. Everybody thinks they have great relationships with their clients. They'll say the reason clients buy from me is because I build such great relationships with my prospects and my clients. But then you ask a follow-up question with, what's that relationship built on? What's the foundation? Is it just a handshake and maybe a beer at the pub, or in your case, maybe a tea at the coffee shop? So really, when you challenge the agent or the broker, what are you building your relationship on? It's deer in headlights.
The relationship can't just be business. I try to find out what people like. I'll give it in my book. I don't know. Have you got to the point where I talk about the 3 group reps that I really
Yes.
learned?
Yes.
So you remember I mentioned about Jim McKnight, where I said Jim met me in 82, found out I like wrestling. He didn't know how to spell wrestling, but he learned, and we went to wrestling matches together. To this day, Jim McKnight and I are still social friends. We talk to each other. We see each other. It's developed over that. That's the true relationship. But he learned, and I try to find out from clients something about them that I can maybe help out later to develop a relationship. Has nothing to do. For example, if somebody mentions to me they're buying a new house, they got to do this, they got to do that. I'll say, well, before you do this, here's somebody you should speak to. Let me make a phone call, and you help them out. You're not asking for money. You're not going to get any sale from it, but you're helping it out. You're developing the relationship. And you're right, that word is overused. It's just, I hear people say, well, I'm a friend of the client. I don't think so. It's like teachers used to say, well, I'm a friend of the kids. No, you're not. You're their parents. Well, during the day, you're their teacher. You demand respect, but you are also cognizant of developing a relationship. I'm friends in quotation marks with some of my clients because we get along, but I'm still the broker. I'm still the guy with the knowledge on the insurance. You are coming to me for that. And I will come to you in your job if I need lighting or shoes or whatever. That's it. And then we do it that way. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, well said, Joel. And kind of 2 things I'd like to tease out there, or maybe a little more. When you mentioned being able to connect a client with another professional, go talk to this person. The concept we usually use with that is this idea of being a resource broker. So in addition to whatever you're selling or however you're advising your client, you have access to all these other resources, be it other professionals, other things in the community, other services, where you're right, you don't get a direct benefit. There's no commission, there's no affiliation. But part of the value you bring is that you're able to, whatever problem the client brings to you, you can help them troubleshoot. You can help them diagnose and do some of that triage work and connect them to a really good lawyer for this situation, or a really good bookkeeper for the situation, or a really good mortgage broker, or whatever the case is. And that is hugely valuable because they'll remember that. A client will remember, oh, I went to Joel and he gave me a recommendation of where I can get my car fixed for a good price from a reliable person.
Yeah,
So that type of thing, that's repeat business. And then guess what? It's also reciprocity, because a client will see that you're referring them to other professionals. They'll refer their friends and family to you when that question comes up in their circles.
it's true. And the other thing too is not just accountants, lawyers. How about a plumber?
Yep.
I need a plumber. Well, I have one for you. And you
Yep.
refer them and they work out, and then they get the phone call back saying to me, thank you very much. The guy was there in an hour, couldn't believe it, charged me normal rates, and we don't have that flood anymore. He fixed it. So it's just things like that. Referrals, though, we could talk on that for 5 hours. That's an interesting one. A lot of people will refer you if it comes up, but the point is, if you have a good plumber and they talk to somebody else who needs a plumber, they'll say, well, use my plumber. My insurance guy referred him. And that's where it comes, like, really? And that maybe is where the referral will come from, that part.
Yeah.
I don't ever think, and I might be wrong, I don't think people have an obligation to refer business to me. I really don't. And I know there's talks. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Bill Cates with a C, not a G. Bill Cates. He's the referral coach. He's written 2 books. Bill Cates. I saw him in Toronto 30 plus years ago. I bought his first book 30 plus years ago called The Referral Coach. And his whole thing is on how you get referrals. And he's made a living on telling people how to get referrals. And I think that you earn the referral. I hate this where people say, who do you know that I can go see? Crown Life and a couple other companies years ago, when you delivered a policy, used to have an extra sheet. Give me 3 names of people that I can see. They stopped doing that. You know why? Because people weren't giving them names on the spot. They said, well, let me think about it. You earn it when it comes up. Somebody will call you and it comes up. I got a referral last week from somebody who said, I was talking to my sister. She's unhappy with her agent. And I said, well, go see Joel. So we're going to do something. But the point is, that was because one brought it up and asked. But, referrals, I don't know. I know guys in the business. When I was with Crown Life, there was an agent there. He got so many referrals from clients. He had this system where they just gave it out. But again, what quality is it? I want somebody to phone me and say, I'm in trouble. I just bought a house. I bought from the bank. I'm getting, not the rights I should. I hear you got a better deal. That's what you try to do, solve the problem.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that. I know somewhere later in the book you talk about some of your, we'll call them conversion rates, and how successful your win rates are. That you really do qualify the people coming in to speak with you, so you're not wasting your time with people who are not going to buy. You don't want that low quality lead. You actually want people who are serious about having the conversation with you.
Well, I've always worked on the idea of somebody who's going to come and spend an hour with me, an insurance guy in quotation marks, has to be serious, because I can think of more interesting and fun things to do for an hour than sitting with me. So you qualify and you find out what the problem is, and then you say, okay, it's going to need an hour. Let's talk and let's meet. It's no different when I buy a car. When I see the salesperson, I'm the consumer. I tell them what I want. Now you solve my problem and then you've got the deal, right? When you go into a store for clothes, right? I bought this tie. I asked the guy, I want a bright orange tie. Guy said, right over here, sir. Thank you very much. He didn't come to me and say, can I help you out? What do you look like a guy that needs an orange tie. No, I wanted an orange tie. That's what I bought. And thank you for helping me. Goodbye. And what's your name? We'll give you the commission if that's the way you work. So, that's the way it's the way it's got to be.
Yeah. Now, Joel, I want to dive into the book a little bit. I did flag something here. I wanted to put you in the hot seat and get you to tease something out, if that's all right.
You can put me in anything you want.
Okay. So this is a story about a client that you won over 40 years ago, and you give a little bit of background here about this young lady at the time, but I just want to read one passage from the chapter here. So you say here, fortunately, being the young person that she was, she passed the medical questions very easily and within a couple of weeks. I returned to their home to deliver the policy and get the appropriate sign off signatures. I'm a very quick learner, and I remember Leo said there was no shame in writing multiple policies on a client. I'm very pleased to tell you that over the next 40 plus years, I've kept in touch with the daughter, followed her career, her personal life, which included her getting married and having children. Over those 40 plus years, I've written many life insurance policies on her, some policies on her husband, policies on her grandchildren, disability insurance, long term care insurance, and group benefits. I do keep in touch with her regularly, and I just spoke to her recently because she sent me a referral. So, Joel, I'm going to ask you now, 40 years later, she's still a client. She just sent you a referral not that long ago. How do you maintain a 40 plus year client relationship? One where she's still willing to refer 40 plus years later.
I think in this particular case, and I know who the client is, by the way, the number, when you include all of the policies with the grandkids, her husband, the group insurance, 11. There's
Wow.
11 altogether, 11. I think what happened is part of the situation was the whole story was that her father, in hindsight or foresight, bought her a policy that came due, and there was with Crown Life. And when I started with Crown Life, I used to get orphan policies. Give it to the new guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. If he screws it up, who cares? They don't have an agent anyway. So she was one of my orphans. I went and phoned the father up, said, I got a check for you to give. And then he said, use that to buy a life policy because she's going to need it. And I just kept in touch with her. And we just kept in touch. And then when she got married, she called me, and it was constant there. Now, very, very interesting you mentioned. We're into April. February, I was in contact with her on something in relating to the group insurance. I still do her group. And by the way, that group, 3 people. That's all.
Wow.
She has a small firm, 3 people, still do the service, still speak to her, still find out, still what's going on. I'm on her Facebook, so that doesn't hurt. She's on my LinkedIn. That doesn't hurt, so she keeps my name. But to keep the relationship going, I've always looked at relationships with clients as long-term. And I think, again, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but that's okay. I think too many people, or a lot of people in our industry, look at the short term. Get the client, get the commission. If there's future insurability down there, I'll come back. If not, go on to the next one. That's why a lot of guys write a lot of policies on different people, where some guys might write 20 policies a year, but those clients have been clients of theirs for maybe 10 years, and they repeat and they go back. In my book, I mentioned, I think, Walter Bumby. And Walter Bumby, I learned later on what his trick was. Walter Bumby had a good deal. He went to see a client, always sold the same policy. In retrospect, it wasn't good advice, but that's what, 25,000 low-cost life, still remember. Every one of his clients, some of them may have 10 policies, $250,000, all 25,000 low-cost life. And what he would do is he would say, okay, today is April the 4th, 1980. I will diarize April the 5th, 1982 to call you, to come back to see what's going on. Now, we can give out a secret, can't we, on the 2 years, right? You don't mind that. In the industry, we have what we call a chargeback, and the chargeback was 2 years. So if a client canceled 1 year, 363 days, you pay back the full commission. So he always said to the client, 2 years from now, I'll come back, because now he doesn't have to worry if the client doesn't want to see him. There's no chargeback. The client won't cancel. And Walter wrote a lot of policies on a lot of people based on that. He showed me that a long-term relationship with clients is really important. And I learned from that, not to go back every 2 years, but to keep in touch, which he did. And he just really nurtured I would say his persistency, which means people staying with him, was about 98%. People just didn't leave because he was there regularly every 2 years. He was in contact maybe in that 2 years if something happened, change of address, change of beneficiary. And that's what I learned. So I think that's what it is. Unfortunately, today we don't get that. And we should be able to have that, because I'm not a techie guy, but I hear there's something called CRM, whatever it stands for. And you can pull out all my clients who bought a policy in the last 3 years, all my clients that bought term, and like, it's so easy. And why don't you make the phone call? You know, Alexander Graham Bell was one of the best people for the insurance industry, but he never knew it, because what he did was he said, make phone calls to people. That was great. And so many guys, and that's another thing too, is so many guys in our industry are afraid of phone calls.
Yes.
They will text, they will email,
they
will Zoom. They won't get in front of the client and phone them. Yeah. So that's a good point. Thank you.
No, that's a great story. And it's so true, that call reluctance. There's something about the phone. I don't know what it is. It's got poison on it, or it's going to connect you to the underworld or something. But so many people have such call reluctance. Where
some people think this is my year.
I do want to fast forward a little bit in the book here, because there's a conversation that you had with a gentleman by the name of David. Not me. This would have been another David at the time, where you were both discussing ideas about what it takes to be successful. You've got a list of them here, and one of them I really want to zero in on. So I'm going to read through the list and then ask you a follow-up on the one thing that I just thought, I want to ask Joel about this.
Sure.
So it says here, always service your clients first. Okay, that one makes sense. Always be happy when there is a problem with a client, because when you solve it, you will have the satisfaction of knowing you helped the client and know the client will stay with you. Sound advice. Never sell on price. You and I couldn't agree more on that, because if you win on price, you eventually lose on price. Happens all the time. Tide goes in, tide goes out. Win on price, lose on price. Keep close contact with your clients. Even though you work for and represent Crown Life, always respect the insurance company, because they are your supplier. 2 more points. Your group representative should become your friend and ally. But the last one, and the one I want you to dig into, do not fear competition, but rather thrive on it. Joel, what does it mean to thrive on your competition?
So I found out a few years ago that there's about 40,000 brokers, agents, whatever you want to call them, in the GTA. I'm sure it's more now, might be, but that are selling what we're selling. And you have to understand, they're going to be contacting your clients all the time. So why fear them? Just relish them, because every single time a client buys from you, you beat 39,999 others. That's a pretty big accomplishment, you know, not bad. So why fear them? Embrace them, because many, I'm sure, David, you've had this many times. Clients will phone me up or prospects and say, you know, you were talking about this. I got another guy. I'm not sure about him. You're a little more trustworthy. Take a look at what he offered. So why would you be afraid of your competition? And the other thing about the industry that I love is that I will share everything I know from everything that I've learned to anybody in the industry, and I won't charge. Free. There's only one restriction. If you run across a client of mine, you back off. You never go after a client of mine. But I will give everything I can to anybody who will ask me for any advice. And that's competitors. And I've given competitors some advice on stuff. I've done that. I've mentored people. So I look at competitors as a positive, not a negative.
It's reassuring that I'm not going to receive an invoice for the hour that you and I are spending here today with all this advice you're giving me today.
0.
One last section from the book that really caught my attention, because it's such a pertinent issue that I get from brokers and advisors all the time. So this is another kind of 3 lessons learned, some ideas that you were talking about. And it says here, the last idea that he gave me was that as you grow and you get more clients, the harder it will be to service them all. So this talks about the delicate balancing act between sales and service. How does Joel Cadesky manage that balancing act?
He doesn't. It's as simple as that. I don't. There's clients, when you've been in the business 45 years, it's impossible to keep in touch with all 45,000 or 4,500 or whatever. I don't even know how many I've got over the years. But what you do is, if a situation occurs, you keep in touch. I'll tell you, Group insurance is the best for keeping in touch because you've got to talk to these clients 4, 5, 6 times a year. Every quarter, problems come up, renewal. You're in contact with them. And I've got clients who have been with me. I just did a renewal last week with a client, and I said to him very simply, it's very interesting. You and I started when we were in our 30s. It's been almost with me over 40 years. Almost 40 years, same guy. Wow. And it's really important. But I see him so often on his group that you do. Life insurance, I don't care who you are, how big you are, how much commission you make, how many sales you do in a year. Nobody can convince me that every single year they talk to every single client. The only people that have to, I understand, are the wealth management guys. But if you've got 1,000 clients, I don't know how you can do that. It might just be you send out a sheet and say, here's where you went up. Last year you had 23,000. This year you got 25. If you have any questions, that's in contact. Well, that's not contact to me. Contact is face-to-face, phone call, whatever. But life insurance, if somebody says to me, oh, I speak to all my clients every year, all the time, I say, well, you're either a liar or you've got 5 clients. Yep. Because when you've got hundreds and thousands of clients, it is impossible. Now, where you will speak to them, though, is on the term insurance, where the 10 years is up. So it might have been 10 years, but you'll talk. You pretty well can keep in touch with them that way. Now with the new CRMs and whatever it is, you more likely can do it by email a lot better. Here's an email. You're in your 5th year. If you want to talk to me, that's contact. At least you get your name in front of them. At least they'll know who you are. But I'm being honest with you. It is I can't balance them because the group insurance takes a lot of my time. I spend a lot of time servicing and selling in my group benefits. And the life insurance I do on top. I mean, I'm still looking at that 100 apps a year. That's my goal. So that's a lot of meetings. You don't just do it in one meeting.
No. You know, a few years ago, I was working for an agency that sold life, group, home, auto, commercial, farm, kind of everything under the sun, including wealth products. And our goal as an agency was to touch 15 to about 17% of the book every single year. And we had, I think, 2,000 households at the time, just under 2,000 households. And like clockwork, you know, we were prospecting for sure. We were taking walk-ins and people calling in and doing regular policy maintenance. But on top of that, we had a goal as an agency, 15 to 17% of the book proactively contacted for those annual reviews or for those kind of client nurturing, client relationship meetings. And I don't know how you could do much more than that.
You know what? You're absolutely correct. And that's actually a high number. If you can do 10%, you're in good shape. Yeah. But how many clients did you say you had?
It was just under 2,000 households. So that's a mix.
15% of 2,000 is about 300 people. Mm-hmm. We've got 365 days a year, of which you're working 200. So do the math. It's not that hard to talk to those people. Just set us, again, going back to the organization, we talked about being a teacher. Every day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, I'm going to make 2 phone calls. By the end of the week, you've done 10. By the end of the year, you've done 500. You can do it. It's just, you need that organization, and that's part of it. But to speak to every client, I mean, there's no way you could have done 2,000. I don't care what manpower you have. First of all, you can make 10 phone calls and the client never returned the call. So that's the other problem that you have. You know, not every client picks up every time you phone.
Yeah, that 15 to 17%, that was on completed meetings. It wasn't just the reach outs. It was,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. 15 to 17% is actually very, very high. I commend your office because I would say 10% is really good.
Yeah. Not to puff them up too much, but we were national leaders when it came to
I wonder why.
tracking it. Yeah.
Geez, no surprise there.
And you know what? We were always among the leaders nationally for how much more, premium growth and household count and referrals. And that was because we spent so much time building real relationships with clients. It wasn't just the one and done. It wasn't just they came 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we haven't talked to them since. We were proactive because oftentimes, Joel, I imagine you run into this all the time where you might have a client who's a group client. They might not even know that you can sell them other things or that your team can offer more than just the group. Is that the case?
Yeah. I always have a story for a story, so I'm going to give you a story. About 35 years ago, I did group insurance for a small company that sold tires. And the administrator of the plan was my cousin. That's how I got in. And it was with Crown Life. And then one day, I don't know how it came up, and she said, "Oh, we got this huge premium that we didn't realize was going to be so big. We did it the first year. We didn't, I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, we wrote this big policy with Manulife with this one guy." I said, "Well, why didn't you come to me?" And you know what her answer was? "I didn't know you did life insurance." So I agree with you there. I've been there, done that. So what I try to do is when I get a prospect that's for life insurance, I let them know I do group. I let them know I do other things, but I'm here for the mortgage insurance, whatever. If I'm doing group, I just let them know. And I've got a fair good response from employees who buy from me life insurance, as well as the owners, as well as the administrator. I've been very good at that because I've let them know. But I learned from that tire company. One thing about me, I'll make a mistake, but I won't make it twice.
And that comes up time and time again in your book.
Yeah. But I allow people to make mistakes, but just never do the same thing twice with me. That really gets me off the roof.
Yep. And it's funny, you talk about how you've learned from that mistake. So now you're constantly making clients aware that you have all these different capabilities. You can help them more than just this one way. I'd be willing to bet that even though you do a great job of telling them, they'll still forget. So they need to be reminded every now and then.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's crazy. And this, you've just got to let them know that you're just, as I say, I'm not a one-trick pony. But I know guys that only sell group insurance.
Yep.
And they won't do anything else. And I know guys that won't do group. They only do life, or they'll do net worth or high net worth, which is the new buzzword, high net worth. So.
Another question for you. So, what advice, other than picking up a copy of your book,
Two copies.
Two copies, yeah. What advice would you give somebody who's newer into the industry? Someone who's just joined, maybe they've never had a sales job before, or maybe they have had a sales job but never in insurance. What if you could pin it down to maybe one or two pieces of advice? What would you say?
So are these people that are actually in the business now, or wanting to come into the business?
Let's say they've just entered the business within the last 12 months.
Okay, so advice I'd give is be yourself first. Be honest with people. Be truthful with people. Be aggressive, but in a positive manner. Always be out looking, prospecting, helping. Always, always, always remember that the client is your objective and making them happy. Always remember that service is king. Always, always, always never forget that without the client, you're out of a job. And they always say to me, "When are you going to retire?" And I give them one answer. I give them many, but one of the answers I give, when nobody buys from me anymore. So that's the advice I give to people. But the best advice I give is be yourself, be honest. People that know me for the years know that I really haven't changed in the personality, the person I am. I've just got more commisery, I guess, if that's the right word, curmudgeon or whatever. I've been more cynical as I get older, more realistic as I get closer to the end. But I'm still the same person. I'm still the trustworthy person. I'm still the honest guy. If you ask me a question, I once had an insurance company actually phone me, I never lied, true story, where they said, "We have asked some advisors this question, but we know you'll give us the right answer because they're giving us the answer we want to hear. So here's the question." And I gave it to them and they go, "Oh, we knew you'd tell us. We didn't think you'd be that." I said, "Well, you asked for it. I only tell honest answers. I only give my response. If you don't like it, don't ask."
Yep. And you know what? That's such a vanishing trait that I'm just observing as I work with agents and brokers. Nobody's willing to tell the client that their baby's ugly. That's the phrase that, we sometimes use. It's like sometimes it is your job, it's your responsibility to say, you know what? Don't put that baby in the pageant. Too ugly to win.
Yep, that's true. And you know what? Sometimes you got to tell the client, "You're not my client. I'm not
Yep.
going to sell you something because I don't think you need anything. Or you're too far gone on this policy. If you cancel, you're going to lose 30 grand. It's nice to start a new one. I'll make commission. Stay with what you got. Take your losses. You made a bad mistake. Just don't do it again." Yeah, and some people don't like to hear the truth. Well, if you don't like to hear the truth, don't have me as your broker. 'Cause I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not.
If you want to pay someone to lie to you, there's lots of folks out there.
Oh, there's lots of them out there.
I guess last question for you, Joel. You alluded to being a little bit of a cynic and maybe increasing in cynicism. So I want to poke that a little bit here.
Sure.
Over 40 years in the business, you just gave positive advice to people who are entering. You've seen a lot over the last 40 years. You've experienced changes in the marketplace, new technologies, whatever the case is. What do you see happening in the industry over the next 5, 10 years? What are your predictions for what insurance group, whatever the case is, the insurance business, what does that look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
So let me take it into two spots, because you mentioned group and life, and I like that. Thank you for doing that, because it's two different animals, two different ways of looking at it. To do the group business in the next 5 years, I think, is such an opening, and people that aren't getting into it are losing out on it. From what I see with prospects and clients, they're starving, and that's the right word. They're starving for service, because COVID showed us a lot of deficiencies in our systems. And one of them they realized was service is downhill. And I think that if you can service clients and you've got the connections to go out and see people and do the business and service in the way, your business will go through the roof. I see that the opportunities in group insurance. And the other thing is, because of COVID, it is very hard, as we all know. I mean, one of the biggest obstacles for my clients is retention of employees and getting new employees. And one of the ways you can do it for both is a good benefit plan. So people want to put these in. I mean, I've written in the last 2 years some new business of people that never had business. I've talked to insurance companies who say their new business of never having business is growing. People are realizing. So the opportunity in the group business is phenomenal. Anybody who's just doing a one area and forgetting about it, hook up with somebody, find somebody, join an organization, learn about it. So I think the group business is wide open positively. Negatively, I think that the insurance companies, it's getting shorter and shorter. I mean, when I first started in the business, I used to go to market A to Z, Aetna to Zurich. And I used to go out and do 20, 25 quotes, which was crazy, but I didn't know any better. Today, you usually do 4 or 5, because there really aren't a lot of companies that are selling group benefits, especially in the small market, which I am. The small market, by the way, that's the advice I give to people. Just don't go after my client. But the small market is open. These 3 and 4 and 5 life companies, they are so willing and wanting. But you know what the answer is a lot of times when I take these new cases? Why did you never have one before? You've got a life guy, you've got a commercial guy, you've got a guy who does your house. Oh, I asked him. He said, we don't go that small. Or we couldn't find a company that did 3 lives. Well, I can. So that's part of it. So I think the group business is shrinking a little bit with the number of carriers. The other thing that I think is that's really going to change, we've got very high-end, high-cost drugs that are on the market that insurance companies are paying for. And it's not uncommon for a group to have a $200,000, $300,000 claim at the end of the year for cancer. It's not uncommon. Where years ago, 25,000 was, well, really that expensive? So that's hurting the insurance companies. Rates are going up, definitely. We're never going to be where the US is, but we're pretty high. But I think the group market is just wide open. And if you can get into it, join an organization. I belong to the CGIB. Get into that. The Patriarch is the guy that started it. He'll guide you. He's really good on that. Now, as far as life insurance, man, I could go on. How many hours do we have? So basically what I see in the life insurance, when I used to start in the business, it was all paper apps. Now the big turn is e-app, e-app, e-app. I don't do e-apps. So eventually I'm going to have to get to a situation, maybe, but not for a while. I still go to the bank, deposit checks, write things out. I don't use online. So, and banks are still allowing you to do that. Eventually, when no banks allow tellers to work, then I guess I'll have to learn that. So, eventually that'll happen. But right now, I'm thankful I've got enough insurance companies that will say, bring all the paper apps you can do. But I see the trend is to e-apps. I see the trend is to non-face-to-face, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and larger. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I have, on LinkedIn, as you know, I have gone against that. I'm very much an in-person guy. I think the E&Os is going to come down the road to haunt some people. I really do. I think the underwriting of insurance companies is tightening up, and I see that's going to get worse and worse and worse. I always tell the story of Canada Life. I don't mind giving plugs. They don't owe me anything. Years ago, I had a diabetic on insulin. They issued the contract standard. Try that today. What I did with that one, just for when they're if you know Toronto, University Avenue is where the head office is. The policy I found out was issued standard. I said, don't send it to me. When will it be printed up? They said 2 days. I said, what time can I pick it up? They told me. I drove down University Avenue in Toronto, I still remember 1:45. I was outside the elevator. The guy came holding it like this. It was so hot, gave it to me. I got in my car, drove it to the client, said, sign off, because back then you had to sign off that you received it. I said, they can't take it away from you now. Try that now. So I think that type of thing is gone. I think the underwriting is getting tougher. People that I've always believed strongly, and I've been to so many seminars, buy insurance when you can, not when you need it, because when you need it, you might not get it because of your health. I always remember with Crown Life, I still have it visualized 45 years later, that there was a guy went like this and he said, there's a line in the sand called insurability. As soon as you cross it, you can't buy any more insurance. For some people, it's age 5. Some people, it's age 85, depending on their health. But that's what it is. So I think that the insurability is going to be tougher. Standard policies are going to be tougher to get. Getting declines are going to be on the incline. Yep. And I think that you're going to have to really impress upon younger people to get into the game, even if it's term insurance. Buy $2 million of term. You can change it to a permanent, no medical, and they can't take it away from you. So buy as much as you can afford, even if you don't need it. I'm looking at a $3 million policy now on somebody who really doesn't need it, but they will when they have a house, have children, and we're doing it for the insurability of the conversion down the road. Today, 3 million is, and that's what we're looking at. So I think that's part of it. I think the back and forth with underwriters and insurance is going to change as well. I used to be able to go to Crown Life and actually sit with the underwriter and say, here's the application. Let's go over it.
That's not happening anymore.
Not only can you not go down, will they even phone you back? Some companies will, but a lot of them won't. Even in group insurance, go back to group insurance. I have a very good relationship with a couple of companies where I can speak to the underwriter or I can speak to the service person. And other ones, you got to send an email and they will send it. So I think the communication is going to change, has already, but I don't see it getting any better. The other thing I think with life insurance is, and this is positive, I've always felt the insurance industry is an innovative type of industry. 1996, I was up in Thornhill, Ontario. I was at a meeting. Marius Bernard was the speaker. Do you know who Marius Bernard is?
I can't say that I do.
Okay, Marius Bernard was a doctor who assisted his brother, I forget his first name, Bernard, who came up with the first heart transplant in South Africa. Marius Bernard said, now that people can live with a heart, but they've got financial problems. So he convinced Canada Life to issue a critical illness policy. Christian Bernard, sorry. He let a policy. If you had a heart transplant, you get 25 grand or whatever. Now, so I was there in 1996, but they came up. Now you've got 21, 25 conditions, heart, stroke, cancer, multiple sclerosis. Long-term care. People were growing older. Let's get a policy for people that need to, as they get in later in life and get sick, don't go to a nursing home. They can stay at home and they have money coming in for a caregiver. So I see that the industry is coming up with, and I think that's positive. And I really think that's the key to our business. It will get better as the need is there. They seem to be able to figure it out. And the public will buy. The public will buy once they see the product. The first critical illness policy I ever sold was 1996 after Marius Bernard. And when I gave it to the sales pitch, in quotation marks, I don't pitch, but I can't think of another word. First thing she said is, where have you been? I've been looking at this. My mother had cancer and no money. I want that. Question for you. Do you think that person still has that contract? Absolutely. Has never given it up.
Wow. Wow. I guess so you had some cynicism in there, but you also found a way to be optimistic about it. And the optimism is the innovation in the industry, the fact
Oh,
that products are getting better.
and in group insurance too.
Yep.
Health spending accounts, right? I never did a
Yep.
health spending account years ago. We never even knew what it was. Cost plus, who knew what that was? All of these things that they're throwing out, high maximums that were never around. We'll issue contracts, no medical, no pre-existing conditions. Crown Life, I had to write a policy. I had to have everybody, we had to sort of make sure they're healthy.
Yep.
So I think that the industry is a really good industry in innovation. But they just have to come into the 20th century. Notice I said 20th, didn't say 21st. Because I think they're way behind in certain things, and I don't think they'll ever change. One of the problems of our industry, and again, I'll get in trouble over this, but that's okay. If you're a round peg in a round hole, you'll fit in nicely. But if you're Joel Cadesky, who's a round peg, and you don't find a round hole, you only see square holes, you got a problem. You'll adapt to it, but it creates. And I think they got to realize there's a lot of guys out there like me that are round pegs, square hole guys, and they will accommodate me. And eventually that'll happen. And I get accommodated. I mean, they don't like it, but, business is business.
It still happens. Yeah. And I think the point that you made about the industry, creative, innovative, open, you have all kinds of different personalities who work in the industry, all types of people who are successful despite those differences. But one thing that's so universal, we are slow to move. We are so slow to move and adapt. So your point about let's get into the 20th century super resonates.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the EAP, I keep harping on that because it bogs me. The thing with the EAP, they think that they're advancing because of that, and I actually think they're retracting. I think the client experience is gone. I don't know. This is a funny story. I changed insurance brokers for my house and car. The guy's in Mississauga. I got a referral. I spoke to him on the phone. He said, okay, I'll send everything to you. I said, no, you're not. You're coming to my house. He actually came to my house. Now, the commissions on car and house insurance are that. He actually came to my house. We filled out the application. I gave him a check. To this day, I'm still with his agency. You know why? Because he came out. If he would have sent that, I would have gone to another broker. And I think, again, I go back to that again. I think that's missing today. That really is. And it's not just insurance, it's other industries too.
One thing that I noticed in, selling insurance and all kinds of products, like I mentioned before, I worked at an agency that P&C, I did the home, the auto, the commercial, we had the groups, we had the life, we had the wealth products. I found that my success rate or my win rate when I went to visit the client was probably 10 times higher than just a phone-based quote, or even when they walked into the office. There's something special about being across the kitchen table from the person who says, yes, I'm going to trust you with protecting the things I care about the most.
Yeah. That word trust, first time we mentioned that today. Huh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
But
because it goes back to the relationship business. Do they trust what you're offering is in their best interest, not your pocketbook?
Yes.
And I think people who have dealt with me over the years have realized that I'm in it to make money. Obviously, I want to put my kids through university, et cetera, but I would never sell a contract that was a higher commission if it wasn't in their advantage. Same thing in group insurance. Sure, I could move you to this company, but it's not as good as this. It's less premium, but you got more value. So,
Joel Cadesky, the book is retired. No, it's not retired.
Not retired.
Rewired.
You got
not
it.
Expired. The book is
I'm
available.
Still alive.
It's still alive. The book is available on Amazon. Where else can people pick up your story?
You can go on Indigo. And if you live in the Toronto area and you live near Yorkdale, you can go to Yorkdale. It's in the business section on the second floor, alphabetical by author.
Joel,
thank you. Go across Canada eventually.
Joel, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous with it. There's so much more to be talked about. You have such an illustrative career and so many stories to share. Hopefully we can talk again sometime soon.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you very much.